Exercise 7 continues our study of the first E string in first position. This exercise includes everything that we've learned up to this point with the addition of 4 extra features. We will be learning a new accidental called the flat, which lowers the note by a half step. We will introduce the ledger line, and we have 2 new notes, G flat and A flat. The flat lowers a note by a half step. So for example, if we take this G on the 3rd fret and lower it down to the 2nd fret, that note becomes a G flat. And we show that just above the top line on the musical staff. So it's the space above the top line, and we put a flat symbol in front of it to show that it has been lowered by a half step. If we take the A at the 5th fret and lower it down to the 4th fret, that note becomes an A flat. We're just lowering it by a half step. And we show that on what we call a ledger line. And we need a ledger line because we've run out of lines. And so just above that space where the G is occupying, we need to go higher, so we need to show a ledger line so that we can identify this as an A flat. And of course, you got to put the flat in front of it to show that it's an A flat. Now in exercise 6, you learned that by raising this F by a half step, it became an F sharp. Well, in this exercise, we are taking this G and lowering it by a half step, and we're calling it a G flat. In other words, F sharp and G flat are the same note. We call this enharmonic spelling. F sharp is enharmonic to G flat. In the previous exercise, you also learned that by raising this G a half step, it became a G sharp. Well, that G sharp is enharmonic with A flat. They are the same note. G sharp is enharmonic to A flat. And a lot of this has to do with what the composer is trying to communicate to the reader. Get out your 9 points. It's time to get to work. And we're going to start with point number 1, which is the term first position. And by now you know that means the first 4 frets on the guitar. We're learning notes in first position on the first E string. And I want you to start with a hold technique over that E string in first position, just like I do right here. That is a hold technique. If you don't know what a hold technique is, then you need to review level 5 at levels for guitar. By implementing the hold technique, it's going to help your reading by keeping your eyes on the music and off your guitar. Point number 3, don't forget to alternate. If you're a flat picker, make sure that you use down and up strokes through the entire exercise. And if you're a classical guitarist or flamenco guitarist, to alternate those index and middle fingers using free or rest strokes. Point number 4, I want you to count the rhythms on the page with your voice as you tap counts 1, 2, 3, and 4 with your pencil. When you get to the rest, you can either say the word rest or remain silent for that count. And don't forget about the and syllables on these eighth notes here. If you need to write in the counts above the note heads like I did here, feel free to do so. That's not cheating. So for example, in measure 13, you can write in count 1 above this note head here. And on this eighth note, you can write in the and of 1, count 2, the and of 2, count 3, and then you can put a number 4 above this quarter rest on count 4. Now we count to 4 because of the top number in the time signature. 4/4 means that there are the equivalent of 4 quarter notes in each measure. As you know, a measure goes from this line to this line. And if you do the math, it should calculate 4 every single time. This quarter note plus this quarter note plus this quarter note plus this quarter note equals 4 quarter notes. That bottom number means quarter if it's a 4. If we go over here to measure 9, we see that an eighth plus an eighth equals 1 quarter. These 2 eighths equal a quarter. Here's a quarter and here's a quarter. That's a total of 4 quarter notes in the measure. Measure 10, we have a quarter note, a quarter rest, a quarter rest, a quarter rest. That's a total of 4 quarters. So it doesn't matter how you slice it, each of these measures will be the equivalent of 4 quarter notes, and that's why you're counting to 4. To demonstrate, I'm going to count with you from measures 1 through 16 at 40 beats per minute on the metronome. If this is too fast, you can slow me down on the media player. You want to go slow enough so that you can articulate those counts clearly and so you can look ahead. The reason I'm only doing measures 1 through 16 with you is because 17 through 32 are an exact copy rhythm-wise. So the only difference between the two halves is 1 through 16 uses sharps, measures 17 through 32 uses flats. Okay, I will give a 4 count and we'll begin. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1 and 2 and 3, 4. 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 3. 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Point number 5, I want you to say the notes on the page without the guitar. So you don't have to worry about finding notes on your instrument, and you don't have to worry about counting rhythms. Nothing fancy here. All I want you to do is to point at a note and say the note name. And do so in a random way so that you're not memorizing the exercise. I want you to memorize the note names, not the exercise. G, F sharp, E, G natural, G sharp. Don't forget about your rules for accidentals. We have all 3 in play in this exercise. For example, measure 11 has a little bit of everything in it. Count 1 starts off with a G, and then it moves up a half step to a G sharp on the end of 1. That's rule number 1, and that says that any note that is sharped will remain sharped until the end of the measure. So in normal circumstances, this G here would be influenced by this G sharp here, and we would normally call this a G sharp because of that rule. But what happens is in count 2, we have a G natural. So that's rule number 3 that states, a natural cancels any preceding sharped or flatted note by making it normal. So this natural here will influence the following G. In other words, this is also a G natural because of this natural symbol. It's canceling the sharp here. And as we move on, we have an F sharp. That's rule number 1. And normally that F sharp would influence this note right here. But once again, we have a natural on the end of 3 on the F. And so this natural symbol is going to influence this F here. And that means that we are dropping the sharp from the and of 2. So we have an F sharp here, we have an F natural here, and then that natural remains to influence this F note here. Now you can call this note an F or an F natural. It's the same thing. Measure 23 starts off with a quarter rest on count 1, and then it moves to a G flat. That's rule number 2 that states that any note that is flatted will remain flatted until the end of the measure. So that would normally be the case. Normally we would call this a G flat. But rule number 3 happens, and that is the natural symbol. And that's rule number 3, which says a natural cancels any preceding sharped or flatted note by making it normal. So we're going from a G flat up to a G natural. You can call this G natural or just G. And then finally, on count 4, we have an A flat, which is rule number 2. And we are making use of the ledger line, and that's what it looks like on the staff. So if you just went up alphabetically starting on this line and you made your way all the way up to here, you would see why we call this ledger line an A. So we have E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. This line is F, this space is G, and then this ledger line is the next note, which is A. And since we have a flat on there, we call it A flat. So just memorize that this ledger line is an A, and then we just make it into an A flat because of the flat symbol. Rule number 2. Point number 6. We are going to say the notes on the page in rhythm without the guitar. So the focus is on note identification in rhythm. As you say the note names, I want you to tap your pencil to counts 1, 2, 3, and 4. When you get to this rest, you can either say the word rest or remain silent for that count. I'll work with you at 40 beats per minute on the metronome. If that's too fast, you can always slow me down on the media player. Remember, you need to go slow enough so that you can articulate the notes clearly and so that you can train your eyes to look ahead. I'm going to break it up into 2 halves, 1 through 16, and then I'm going to do a segment with measures 17 through 32. The only difference between the two is that the first half is using sharps and the last half is using flats. All right, I'll give a 4 count and we'll begin. 1, 2, 3, 4. G, G sharp, G, F sharp, G, F, E. G, G sharp, G, F sharp, G, E. E, F, G, F sharp, G, F, E, F sharp, G, G sharp, G, F, E, G, G sharp, G, F, G, F, E, G, G sharp, G, F sharp, G, F, E, F, E, E, F, E, F, F sharp, G, F, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, G, G, G sharp, G, F, G, F, E, F, E. Measures 17 through 32. 1, 2, 3, 4. G, A flat, G, G flat, G, F, E, G, A flat, G, G flat, G, F, E, E, F, G, G flat, G, F, E, G flat, G, A flat, G, F, E, G, A flat, G, F, G, F, E, G, A flat, G, G flat, G, F, E, F, E, E, F, E, F, G flat, G, F, E, F, G flat, G, A flat, G, G, A flat, G, F, G, F, E, F, E.